Welcome to Page and Screen with John Paul SARNI, where each week we're going to focus on a new or classic book that has caught the eye of the entertainment industry. And today, I'm very happy to be talking about I guess we could call it a modern classic book. And I'm going to tell you something that is both very bold, but also 100% true. And that is that the simple act of reading one book can change the course of your life, because that's what happened for me. In 1993, John Behrens published Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, and it would be on the bestseller list for over 4 years. And it was a remarkable book that I read some years later when I was getting ready to start looking at universities and colleges. And it was such a marvelous portrait of the city of Savannah, Georgia, that I ended up going to Savannah College of Art and Design, moving down there sight unseen, based on the beauty of that wonderful, wonderful book, and all the eccentric characters that were in it. And so that's why I moved down to Savannah College of Art and Design. Now it is getting a new adaptation. So today's guest is a Tony, Olivier, Emmy, Drama Desk, and Outer Critics Circle Award winner, with credits including Frozen, Evita, How to Succeed, Thoroughly Modern Millie, and West End and regional credits that are just probably too numerous to mention here. The new project is, where he is a director, is the world premiere of Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, the musical, which is at Chicago's Goodman Theater, which has just opened and has already been extended through August 11th. So please welcome to the show, Rob Ashford.
Hello.
Hi, how are you? Nice to see you.
How are you? Good to see you.
We literally just saw each other a few less than 2 days ago.
That's right. At the premiere of the show. Thank you for coming, by the way. Coming to Chicago. That was great.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was wonderful, and I love the Goodman Theater. I've been a huge fan of that, and I'm thrilled that the show is premiering there. So, you and I have read this book now decades ago.
Yes.
But for people that don't know, there was a book in the 90s. In the early aughts, there was a feature film directed by Clint Eastwood, and now there's a musical. Right. So for people who might not know the book or the story, how do you explain to people what Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil is?
Well, I think I would call it a travel log based around a murder mystery.
Good.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And John Behrens, the author, he talks about really what he was writing was characters. Mm-hmm. That's what he was looking for, characters. He wasn't trying to be political with anything. He wasn't trying to spin anything a certain way. It's just that there was such a wealth of interesting people that he met in Savannah that his whole idea was just to weave those stories together. And what took him there was the idea of exploring this murder that supposedly, I guess I have to say supposedly, I don't know about that, was done by Jim Williams, allegedly done by Jim Williams, an antique dealer, and who was accused of murdering his hustler lover.
And I think that, a lot of people now know the city of Savannah, and they've probably been there for St. Patrick's Day and have walked around the beautiful squares with the hanging Spanish moss. But
sure.
People might not know that the reason that they know about Savannah in the first place is because of this book. In a lot of ways, it was like it did, for Savannah what Under the Tuscan Sun did for Tuscany.
Yes, absolutely. And a year in Provence too, right? That as well. Those kind of they say in Savannah, because we spent a lot of time there researching the book and doing writers' retreats and things and researching for the musical, that Savannah was saved by Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil and Forrest Gump. They both happened around the same time, and that really, really did open up the floodgates of tourism, certainly, and interest in Savannah.
Yeah, and the famous park bench, of course, from Forrest Gump.
Yes, of course.
Now, with this adaptation, I mean, the book is one thing because, it's John Behrens really as himself. He's dropped into the city, and it's like this carousel of these amazing characters that he meets and talks about them in the amazing world that is Savannah. And then in the film, there's a character that was created to sort of be, to kind of give
Right.
agency to the audience. As
That's right. That was John Cusack, right? That's
right,
the
that
part.
was John
Yeah.
Cusack. But now in this new adaptation, there's a new angle, which is kind of really breaking the fourth wall, and with this idea of the writer. So can you talk about that approach and how you do this on stage?
Well, Taylor Mack, who's written the book for this musical, who's a great playwright, uh, thought that would be a great way to include the audience in the show, and that is by the reason all these people are gathered together is because they hear there's someone writing a story about Savannah, and they all want to not just be in the book, but some of them want to steal the book. They want the book to be about them. And the way that it's set up is that particularly Jim Williams, the antiques dealer who was accused of the murder, and the Lady Chablis, who is I guess you would say I don't know if you would say a drag performer at that time. I imagine that's what they would say, but a someone on their way to being a trans woman fight each other to steal the book, basically.
Yes, everyone very very much wanted his attention.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Now, and beyond the playwright, can you tell us a little bit about the team that's put this together? Because it's been close to a decade in the making, I believe.
It has been. I've been with it the entire time, so I've been with it for the full 10 years. Only in the last four and a half years have we had this writing team, which is Taylor Mack on the book, and Jason Robert Brown, who's a great composer lyricist, on the score. I've worked with Jason before on the musical Parade that was originally done at Lincoln Center, which I was actually in, and the assistant choreographer. And then I directed and choreographed a production in London at the Donmar like 20 years later. And then, so Jason and I have known each other and worked together for a long time. And Tanya Burrow Torres is the choreographer, and Christopher Oram has designed the show, and Tony Leslie James, our costume designers. We have an A-list team of folks who all gathered in Chicago 2.5 months ago to put the show onto the Goodman stage.
And we should also say that you have a really incredible cast, and I think that one of the performers that really comes to the front is playing Lady Chablis. And so, can you tell us a little bit about who is in the story, who's on stage?
Well, Jay Harrison G is playing the Lady Chablis, and you might know Jay won a Tony Award, not this most recent season, but the season before, for Some Like It Hot on Broadway. And Jay was Jay's been she's been around, but it wasn't like that. There were these starring moments that she had, like in Some Like It Hot, and certainly this is Jay at her best, and it's been a joy to work with. And also, I think Taylor and Jason both have really enjoyed writing for Jay.
Yeah, and I should say, it's I've seen a lot of shows that often will start be on their way to Broadway. They open in Boston or Chicago or somewhere.
Sure, that's right.
Even the other night when the show opened, there are numbers in the show that are so well done and with such incredible talent on stage that it feels like they're already performing at the Tony Awards. So congratulations on an amazing company.
Oh, yeah, they're wonderful, wonderful. Sierra Bogus too. Also, she plays Emma, one of the Restoration Society ladies in town, and Tom Hewitt, who plays Jim Williams, and Austin Colby, who plays Danny Hansford, the hustler who was murdered.
And so, what is the approach as you were putting this together, and obviously in concert with a couple of writers? This is a story that is now 30 years old, and it's in Savannah, which is its own special, very particular part of the country. How do you approach the tone and the style and all of that? Because there's some very eccentric characters, and it can sort of easily slide into camp, but it doesn't. It's larger than life, and it's very fun and entertaining. But how do you address that? How do you style this for the stage?
Well, the trickiest part of the whole process has been deciding what characters to highlight, what stories to pull through, who to give the most real estate to, because there's so many interesting characters, and so many of them uh, are just Savannah. They
Right.
represent Savannah. They don't have a storyline as much as to remind you that we're talking about a very unique and interesting and not your normal place, not a normal place. I think you can probably testify to that since you spent some time there. Yes, unique, and also the other great thing about both the musical and Savannah is like everyone's not exactly what they pretend to be,
Right.
and that causes for a lot of interesting drama, and that's it's a lot for the actors to play as well. The idea of like you know. Some of the blue blood ladies who are judgmental of everyone in town are also selling off their antiques one by one and closing down parts of their grand mansions because they can't afford it anymore.
Right.
Jim Williams is pretending to be, the most cultured man in Savannah, but he grew up in Gordon, Georgia, which is a small town a couple of hours away. And so uh, and then the Lady Chablis, of course, it's a man dressed as a woman, or is it a woman, a trans woman, or what is this? What is the so many questions about the truth, everyone's truth.
Yeah. I mean, they are really remarkable, and Lady Chablis later would write her own book, I think called Heidi
Yes,
My Candy.
hiding my candy.
Yes,
Yeah,
and I think that yes, they're all incredible characters, and so really, really well done and brought to life. I also wanted to ask you though about as this is taking a book to the stage. In this past season, looking at the theater, we have seen a lot of pieces on stage that are driven by intellectual property, that are things like The
yeah.
Outsiders, Illinois from the Sufjan Stevens album. Grapes of Wrath is about to open in London. Sunset
The
Boulevard.
Notebook, the Notebook, based on the film and the book.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the Nope. I mean, it is huge. I mean, do you think that it's more prevalent now than in the past? I feel like we're seeing less original musicals, and I don't know if, whether that's good or bad.
yeah.
But do you feel that that's the case?
I mean, there's quite often some kind of source material, but I think that producers particularly rely on the marquee value of titles that people recognize,
Yeah.
and because that's one step toward getting your product out there that people recognize. Oh, I know, I read that book. Oh, I saw that film. Oh, I had that album. So I think that it's normal in the very, very competitive world that we're in the last 10 years, let's say, for that to happen more and more and more. But even original musicals, like say a musical about Parade, the musical that I'd done with Jason, that is, it wasn't a book and it wasn't a film, but it was based on a true story, on real information,
Sure.
of a real person who was accused of murder and lynched. But I think more and more marquee titles uh, are in demand for producers, because it gets you halfway there with the recognition. You have a title people know, and you have a star that people know, then hopefully that will help you rise to the top.
Well, and speaking of stars that people know, I mean, I remember that in the probably in the '90s and the early aughts, there was artists like Audra McDonald did these great
Hmm.
albums that were really featuring these up and coming composers and people like
Right.
like Jason Robert Brown and like Adam Gettle and these sorts of artists.
Andrew Lippa and all those.
Andrew
Yes.
Lippa, yeah. So do you? Is there anyone who's doing that now? I mean, Audra's obviously busy. She's about to open Gypsy, which is great. But I mean,
Yes.
who is the who is shouting from the rooftops about the great new composers on Broadway and beyond?
Well, I think that those great new composers are, because they're so sought after, and they're so that they get an opportunity very well. You don't have to have a singer recording their songs and trying to get it out there. I mean, they'll get if they're any good at all, they'll get an opportunity to do their show. because everyone is desperate for material,
Yeah.
for content, just like television and film now. It's like everyone's looking, constantly looking. So, Pasek and Paul, they do one show and they're wonderful and they're discovered, and then they're just catapulted right away.
Yeah.
I think the opportunities are there, for the new writers, and they can get quite a forum that's quite seen, quite public.
And do you think now that we're in a moment when, when I arrived in Chicago to see the show the other day, the taxi driver was telling me that, Chicago as a city hasn't quite returned to the moment that was pre-COVID, that there's a lot of American cities that are still trying to come back, from a few years ago. Do you feel like the American theater or the theater in London has sort of come back? Are we back to normal? Or are we still not quite there yet? With the audiences, with the volume?
I have to say, because I work in both London and New York equally, and London did seem to bounce back quicker, for sure, in the business, in the theater. I mean, part of that is government subsidy. So part of that is that you can be more daring and brave, and you can do your seasons at a place like the National or the Donmar or the Almeida, and these incredible theaters that London has, that you can do that with we would say nonprofit, I guess, kind in mind. So they have support from the government. We don't have that in New York, in Broadway. I mean, certainly there are theaters like Lincoln Center, Second Stage, Manhattan Theater Club. These places, they have board of directors. They have people who donate money to roundabout donate money, but it's not a government thing. So it's all up to individuals. And there was in all of our regional theaters as well since COVID. I think a lot of the regional theaters survive on a subscriber system, and that has changed. People aren't thinking ahead. People don't buy a season anymore. People don't buy 5 shows in a season. Rarely. It's like, I'm not sure what will be happening then. I don't know what the world will be like. So all the rules have changed. So all the rules have changed for theater everywhere. London, I think, has bounced back quickest because of the government subsidy. But I think that New York is, I think our community is trying to, but again, we're in the middle of, our whole world is in the middle of Times Square, which has not bounced back. And that community is quite, half of those office buildings are not occupied anymore. And so it's just the dynamic of the neighborhood that is affecting Broadway right now, I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's good. It's nice to see that the artists we love, yourself included, are so busy. I mean, you and I were talking the other night about, you've now opened the show and you're now back to New York. So I think you have a very full dance card. Can you talk a little bit about what you have coming up and where you're going?
Sure. Well, I mean, I certainly feel very fortunate. That's for sure. I'm gonna do a King Lear with Ken Branagh this fall at the Shed in New York. And I've worked with Ken before. I did the Scottish play with him, and I did Winter's Tale.
Because you say the Scottish play.
I know. I don't want any bad luck anywhere. So Macbeth and Winter's Tale, The Entertainer, and so I've worked with Ken a lot. So we're going to do King Lear at the Shed in the fall. I'm very excited about that. I love working with Ken, and I love the challenge of Shakespeare, because I certainly didn't grow up with that being a part of my world. So I like that kind of work and delving in. And then after that, I'm doing a production next year in London at Sadler's Wells based on Pete Townshend's Quadrophenia album. So it's turned into a ballet theater piece. So a dance and theater piece will be at Sadler's Wells, and working with Pete on it and Rachel Fuller, who did all these symphonic orchestrations. I'm directing that, and an amazing choreographer named Paul Roberts is choreographing that. And Paul Smith's doing the costumes, Christopher Orm's doing the design. I'm really excited about it, and excited about creating a new thing. And then I'm working on a revival of a couple of things that I can't say yet because they they're not real yet, but yeah, a lot of stuff in the works and a lot of interesting stuff. And then hopefully, of course, we'll continue with Midnight, and we'll have another chapter of the life of Midnight in the Garden.
Yes, indeed. And you and I are working on a project together, which we can't talk about
Yes,
yet.
we are. Yes, we are.
So we're very busy. But one of the things I've loved about working with you is that I know that you're a huge lover of books, and you've gifted me books in the past, and we talk a lot about different authors and playwrights and things like that. Are there who are you reading now? If you have time to read for pleasure, who are the what are the books that you're reading? Who are the novelists you're reading?
Yeah, that's a good question.
As the young people say, the TBR pile, the to be read pile.
Yes. Yeah, TBR, the TBR pile. It's big, the TBR pile. I have to say, I've been reading a lot of things recently that I don't know. I guess that are more focused on the work than on the pleasure.
Yeah.
So I don't know what I would say would be the most. I just read a really good book about Maria Callas that Daisy Goodwin wrote, who is a friend of mine and yours too, I think.
Yes, she's a friend of the camp. She is.
Yes. Have you read Diva?
Yes, Diva? I went to the launch event for Diva in London, which was very glamorous, as it should.
Yeah, sure. Great fun. I know I couldn't come. I was thankfully invited, but couldn't make it. So, So all the reading recently has been all work focused, but I look forward to maybe in the next month or so getting into that TBR pile.
Yeah, and now I understand now that you're back to New York City and you are you're back on the ground. Is there a favorite independent bookstore that you have kind of near you in New York City that you like to go to for different events and to pick up books when you're in the market?
Yes, 3 Lives.
Oh yeah,
3 Lives bookstore right in the Village, right around the corner from my apartment.
Very good.
It's amazing.
It's
so great.
And but I don't think they're. Someone mentioned that on the show the other day, but I don't think they're on social media, so we can't we can't tag them. But anyway.
Oh really? Yeah, it's wonderful, and and I think there was a moment in the last couple of years where they were going to tear down the building, and the whole community just had there was an uproar and stopped it all. So they redid the building that it was in, and now it's back in there, and it's all functioning and full of people and life, and so yeah. It's in the Village. It's nice. It's on a little side street, and it's but a really beautiful place. That's my favorite.
Is it fair to say that in New York City, because of what happened during COVID, and I feel like the theaters went away, and then people weren't going to the restaurants and the shops and everything, and that was largely around Midtown. Because when I go to New York now, it's nice to be able to go downtown because it feels like life is still there. You don't see things that are necessarily like boarded up on the ground floor.
No.
Is Midtown in New York? Do you feel like that's coming back? Is it on its way? Are we still a ways off?
I feel like it is. I feel like it's coming back. It's different, though. I have to say. I mean, because the Times Square area is now turning to a mall in a way. So it's like a lot of clothing shops, a lot of name brand clothing stores. So, which is great. No judgment there. Great if it keeps the neighborhood alive and vital and safe. That's good, but that's a lot of Times Square now. I do feel like it's figuring out the new reality of Times Square. I do think that not as many restaurants are closing, and I think they're moving slightly. They're moving further west, but people are discovering those now and adding that into their theater going, because a lot of the restaurants in Times Square itself are no longer.
Yeah.
So I think it's finding finding itself again, and certainly, I mean, our business is good as far as if you look at Variety and you read the numbers, and the difference is now though it's hard to sustain a show that isn't a big hit somehow or has a big star. Like soft hits, people used to say. You could just do well, do fine, and be a show that people like seeing, and you could run 2 or 3 years. But now that's harder.
Yeah.
That's harder to
But we're
do.
also starting to see some success stories of smaller shows that are moving, shows like Oh
Oh,
Mary and things like this that
yeah.
are really
When
breaking
the
through.
Outsiders, I mean, it is wonderful that like this last season in the Tony Awards and everything, that so many shows were awarded, because there's lots of good stuff out there, and no one was singled out. No one received 13 Tony Awards, because as great as that sounds, it's great for that show, but it's not great for the street. It's
Right.
not great for because all anyone wants to see is that show, and they'll pay anything for it. So then you see the one hit show, and you pay as much as if you would have seen three shows.
You also talk about the subsidies in London, and that's why I love going to the theater in London, because the tickets are maybe a third of the price for
Yeah, that's right.
just as good.
That's right.
And usually in a smaller theater too, so it feels more intimate. And
Yeah, it is still. I think they always say, "Oh, it's a way of life in London," and
yeah,
I think it is still a way of life in London. And I think here it's more special occasion, theater special occasion
mm,
things. It's a birthday and anniversary. It's because you're spending a lot more money.
yeah,
So I think that everyone's trying to figure it out, and they're trying to figure out how to have schemes that where they can, have some tickets that are affordable and some tickets that are premium tickets and all that. But I think that uh, it's not quite back yet, but I think it's
it'll get there.
almost back. I think it's almost back. I really do, and I think that people are being brave about the shows they're doing now, and trying things that you aren't 100% guarantee, and trying to find an audience. And I think now producers are actually factoring that into their budgets. Some contingency for the 2 or 3 months it might take to find your audience.
Right. Yeah.
They didn't used to do that, so now I think they've started doing that more.
Well, look, I think it's important, and look, I'm glad that there are new works, even if they're based on older books and things like Midnight that are making the rounds and coming. Um, just on a personal note, I was so happy to be able to come see the show, because, like I said at the beginning, this was a book that's really informed me when I was 18 years old, and I still remember holding the book with its slim, strange little shape that it had. And then
Right.
just the other night, before I saw you at the lobby of the Pendry Hotel, then I saw John Berendt, who I didn't get to see on opening night, but I said hello with a friend of mine from Savannah College of Art and Design. My friend Shane and I were sitting together and struck up a conversation, and was able to chat with him for 30 minutes about how that one book that he wrote changed the trajectory of my life. And now it's this amazing show, and it's hopefully on its way to Broadway very soon. But thank you again for having me. It was amazing.
Oh no, I'm so glad you were there. It was an exciting night, and it's exciting for John too, of course, but for a whole new generation that don't know the book at all.
Yeah.
Young people don't know the book. Some maybe saw the film, but they don't know the book. And also, it wasn't popular, in London either. A lot of people there don't know the book, so it's exciting to introduce a whole new generation to Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil.
Yes. Well, I hope that people will go see, if you have the opportunity to go check it out in Chicago. It's at the Goodman through August 11th. Am I right?
I think so. 11th. That's right. August the 11th. Yep.
August 11th, and then many other things to come. So Rob, thank you so much for coming by, for chatting to me about it, and it was great to see you. And congratulations on the show.
Thank you so much. My pleasure, and thanks again for making the trip to Chicago to see it. We really
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
Absolutely. We'll talk to you real soon then.
Okay. Take care.
All right. Bye.